Okay. I'm gonna try to go back to the normal time frame here, and so I'm gonna roll into the same stuff. I'm trying to get back into the normal time frame, and so second half after the joke jump, I'm thinking that I go back into this and we just crank this thing out one at a time. Let me move my cajon over and back just a little. So that's what I'm thinking on that. And then is that comfortable? Alright, that's kind of comfortable. Alright, it's good enough. See. Alright, okay, it's good enough. Alright, so for the warm up to get the coffee flowing, I was going back to this thing again, and I was liking this pattern going back this way, but I'm thinking to keep it on because the thing I was thinking about with this pattern, let's bring it just down to like Mixolydian. I was looking at the Mixolydian here, so I was going dude, or what was I doing? Now I forgot what I was doing. Let's go back here. It was going Mixolydian here, and then this to here, and then this to here. I was doing that yesterday, and I realized that as I was doing that, I put my other glasses on. That I could basically, once I get to like right here with my pointer finger, I can basically walk back diagonally with just the pointer finger, right? So I could be, so I was like, and if I kept going down, you know, I could still do it. It'd be a little bit more difficult here because this is the one area where it's not right underneath because of the kink in the tuning. Because usually there's a note right underneath because that's the perfect fourth away, and that only wouldn't be the case because of either the kink in the tuning down here or because you have a Lydian up top, which has a weird third modal half step fourth scale degree. So. And this is what I'm guessing that two-fingered French guy figured out, right? He started getting probably really good at walking up and down with these diagonal patterns, because it's like, wait a sec, I could just be like, I can do a lot with one finger, like diagonally. So it works best if you're going backwards this way, and then of course you can add in reaches. But just to run through the shape diagonal, you could just run back. So that's pretty nice. Now, it works best, I think, going backwards like that, but you could think about it going forwards. So let's try to think about it going forwards, like on the same. So I'm going to be on Mixolydian again, just to keep it on Mixolydian, and say now I'm going to go forwards this way, and then go, I'm gonna run into the other one. So let's move this out for now. Or maybe let's do this. Let's go. Let's move this over here. And this one, I'll delete this one. And then I'll just go over here. Now I'll move this one over. So I can go back and forth between the two bits. So this is my walk back bit. And this is like, I'm gonna try to do just pointer finger mainly walk forward. And it's like, why would you do that if you have more than two fingers? Like, why are you playing like a guy that only has, because that allows you to walk, if you can walk diagonally up this way and back this way with just as efficiently as possible with one finger, then of course you can add anything you want, because now your anchor point, your anchor finger is now ready at any point on that path. So I feel like that opens up a whole lot of opportunities. It's not just like, oh, you could, yeah, that's cool if you only had two fingers, dude. No, you're missing the point. There's something to this thing. There's something frickin' to this, okay? And see, when you go this way, okay. Okay, so see, going this way, you would think, normally I would think, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna jump with my pointer up here, and jump up here. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or you would think, I'm gonna go pointer to middle. It's so natural to do that. And then I'm going to do the pointer below it on the Ionian and slide it up to the Dorian, which is cool too. Right? Now this one's wrong. This should be out here. But I could just do it all pointer by just following the pointer finger. Right, which is actually a lot faster than. No, this one should be back here. Yeah, keep it there. What was I doing? Boom, boom, and then boom, boom. So that's pretty nice. Yeah, that's actually quite useful. And then I can so then instead of reaching up here, I can get to this one and then reach out if I wanted to something out here or something. But instead of reaching out on the first finger, I wait till I slide up, and then I can. That's pretty useful, because then on each step I can actually reach up. I can choose to either reach up because my anchor is now any point where my anchor is at. Like I might choose to go to this one as and then for whatever reason I stop there and I reach up to this one, right, or something. So I'm like. It's a really useful way to get your pointer finger into wherever you want it to be, right? So like. I was doing it over here, it just so happened that I was on this one. So if I went back and forth, it would be like... I guess that's not right. So it's actually more efficient to use one finger sometimes. Because then you could just follow the pattern without tying yourself in a knot. That's interesting. Muy interesante, like an elefante. Let's see. Although not as large. So that means the diagonal patterns work good to me. Like it seems like going forward this way and backwards up fairly good, and they work good going backwards this way real good and somewhat going forward this way. So then the next question would be, what about backwards this way? Right, I already did that. They do go good backwards this way. It would be forwards this way. The X needs to go this way. No. That's the only two ways. Shouldn't there be two other ways? No, that's the X. Yeah, it goes forwards and backs this way. And forwards and backs this way. Yeah, that makes sense. So that means any diagonal direction, that one-fingered thing actually works almost better than two fingers, which ties yourself into knots sometimes. But it still sounds kind of cool to jump. So let's try the different ways to finger it. If I finger it and I jump from here to here to here to here, then you get more chunky kind of sound. If I go this way and then I put my finger under here and slide up, then I get if I go back the other way. Versus if I do this backwards, it's like you can almost do the two-finger walk back with these two fingers. Or you do the one finger. Let's try a joke break. Alright, bit of a political joke. That always pisses people off. I get one new subscriber, and then I promptly piss that subscriber off. I've noticed a pattern here. Or maybe it's a different subscriber. I don't know who. I'm just saying. I've been pretty steady. I've been pretty constant on my subscribership for quite some time. But here we go. So Trump's numbers are down here, and I'm not, I whine about the way he talks and stuff sometimes, but I mean, for crying out loud, the guy is doing some good stuff out there. I kind of feel like for in general, I don't think he's totally right on his like some tariff stuff. Maybe I don't know, but maybe I give him some room here to work. So because it seems to be paying off as far as I can tell. so I'll let it roll. Anyways. So now they're saying the numbers are off the charts under President Trump. Off the charts, the numbers. The stocks are up and it's crazy. And people are like, wow, off the charts, man. Because back when Biden was president, remember that guy, President Biden? The only thing off the charts were like lines his son was snorting off the charts, It's like, the difference is day and night. And people had to be like, Hunter, buddy, stop snorting lines of garlic off the charts, man, you degenerate, for credit. Why are you even in the White House? What are you even doing here? Didn't your dad buy you some entertainment so you'd stay out of our hair? And it's like, of course, eventually a story like that would leak then to the press. So then you got that story leaking to the press, and you know what's going to happen once the press gets a story like that. The media would run with the breaking headline at the time, and they'd be saying, breaking news, under President Biden, things are totally off the charts, people. It's going great. Things are off the charts. This is the best time in history. Technically true, off the charts, just not the things or the charts anybody was hoping for, but they don't mention that. They just kind of go with it. You know how the headlines used to go. They're off the charts, people. And that's what you get, man, when you vote someone in here. The mainstream of media sewage would tell us, when you've got a man who's in the White House who's sharp as a tack in charge, using that incredible brain power to always take the high road. This guy always takes the high road, man. Meanwhile, Biden's in there, sitting there like half asleep, eyes drifting close, trying to figure out how he could exchange this running of the country thing that he somehow fell into for the opportunity to possibly smell someone's hair. I'll cash it in. Here's the nuclear codes. Don't worry, dust the garlic off the top of them. That's okay. That's just a kid. Don't worry about that. Give me some hair to smell, baby. And so I feel like we're better. I don't know. I feel like we're better off. Even I'll quibble, but I still think. Anyway, let's try. So I wrote a song about it.
Now they're saying numbers are flying high again. Way off the charts under President Trump. People look around like, wait, hold up. Off the charts? Are we sure that's the bump? Because back when Biden was running the show, the only thing flying off the charts that we saw was the kind of lines in the headlines. I'm going wild like a midnight bazaar. People had to say, Hunter Biden, come on, man, behave. Look off the economic charts, have a little dignity to save. Didn't be tagged by you 1,000 distractions, movies, games, and every toy. We stay out of our hair for 5 minutes.
the charts, man. Stop using the charts, you degenerate. Get. Ah, God. Look at these charts are all rolled up and they smell like garlic. Who rolls up charts anymore? That's not how we do it. Okay. Whatever. Anyways. See if I'm still in tune here. God. Okay. Let's get back to work. Let's get back to work. If I could dust off the garlic off my charts, I could get back to work here. I shouldn't have to. America shouldn't have to dust garlic off their charts before they can get back to business. Crying out loud. Go. Alright, anyways. Let me sit here and complain about it. But I have. Alright. Let's see. So now, we're gonna say, let's go back to where we were before. So now I'm gonna just build this one node at a time. One node at a time. So now I'm going to be focusing in at 4 o'clock, which is the collection notes around the key of C, and that means that C is going to be on the top string, 8th fret, first string down from the ceiling. There's our C going back to the 6th fret, first string down from the ceiling, A. And so here's what I would call shape number 1, which, oh, by the way, I was just thinking on, like, I'm still of the opinion that if you replaced the intervals with basically standard measurements, as I think people would do if you were to create the music system from scratch today, that it's way easier, right? So I'm not trying to, and by the way, I mean, I'm not trying to like patent that. I mean, I'm that idea, or like, I mean, I think it's just obvious, you know? So, I mean, like, so I have all the charts there and nobody listens to me, obviously. So, like, anybody else that wants to, like, pull the chart, like, if this makes any sense, then I feel like you should, like, I think it'll make it faster to learn the stuff. So pull the charts and do, like, try to do your own YouTube channel, right? Maybe there's someone out there that, you know, the people, like, the social medias don't hate, right? you might be able to actually get some pull out there. So if you all the worksheets are on in the course. So if you start like practicing with this and find it useful, which I think people would, then you know, you don't need like use the worksheets and see if you can make it or, you know, show people that it might be there might be use to it, right? So that's the. So if you use this worksheets, you know, that's fine with me, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so if we're going to go 5th fret up, 2nd string down from the ceiling, that's the star of D. If your finger's on the string from space, which happens to be the Dorian node, or node number 2, the Dorian continent at 4 o'clock, or the collection of notes around the key of C. And so we're leaning forward into shape numero uno, which you might call the Ionian G shape from a caged system. And so that's great. And then we're building a chord, and all we've gotten to is the first modal whole step. So that's how you build a chord, usually in scale degrees, right? You name, how is a chord built? You basically say it's major or minor, and then you name the distance to the last the last scale degree, right? What's the distance to the last scale degree? How do you know all the other notes? Because you just take every other scale degree, right? So that means the same thing here. It would be better. It would be easier, in my opinion, if you named the last note by modal half step instead of scale degree, because then you're using a measuring tool that's more consistent. But then you don't need to say major or minor. If you name it by basically the nodal point, then everything is you're more specific because you know what node you're on, and your chords become they tell you more because they're relative to the collection that you're playing in, and the chord names become very simple. It's particularly if they're in the collection of notes. If all the notes are in the collection of notes, your chord naming convention will be very simple, and that gives a cue, an indication as to whether what you're playing is in the collection of notes or not. If the chord name is not simple, there should be a visual cue telling you, oh, that must mean that we're doing something weird here, right? But that's not the case with the current chord naming convention, because we name them based on the major, even if we're not playing off the major. Anyway, so that means the first modal whole step is going to be from the Dorian node. I'm not going to rename it to the 1. I'm just going to keep it at 2 and then measure the distance. What's the distance? 1 modal whole step would be 2 modal half steps, skipping every other modal half step or scale degree, 2, 3, 4. So that means that the Lydian node is always then the first modal whole step times 2, second modal half step plus 1, third scale degree, which has a distance of a long distance versus of 4 notes away versus a short distance of 3 notes away, which you might call a major distance, versus a minor distance. We can test that by looking at the local distance by saying there's 5 notes between the strings, 5, 10. Out here is 15 because the fault line shifts up from the perspective of this tectonic plate. This fault line shifts to the right. So that's going to be 15. 15 is over 12. So I can find the local distance by taking 15 minus 12, which is 5 minus 2, which is 3 notes away. All right. So then let's say, so that's going to be part of our A minor shape if I was to do the full thing, but I'm only focusing on, if I was going to name a 2-note chord, I would have to call that a D minor drop 5, maybe. If I named it under my convention, it would just be a Dorian 1, Dorian first modal whole step, which is build the stack, taking every other modal half step in the 7-note collection from Dorian. So just a Dorian 1. I don't have to drop anything because there's no requirement to have a third in it if you're just naming the locations, building the stack, and then adding anything on top of that in modal half steps. By the way, I'm also calling this a lean forward chord, which you could call a bar chord, because the second modal half step, third scale degree is in the lower right hand side based on the tonic. Okay, so let's say we're going to move it now. I want to move it. Let's make it I want to make it Locrian for some reason. I want to make it crazy Locrian. Why would I want to do that? Maybe because I'm playing like I'm noodling in Dorian. And I'm like, I want that tensiony bit right there for whatever reason. And so I'm going to think of it as in Locrian to get that tritone distance. Okay, so how could I do that? Well, I could just say that I'm not going to change my collection of notes, and I'm just going to lay the Locrian on top of it just for a second. But I don't want to switch the collection of notes in my mind. So how could I do that? Well, I could say, well, there's a Locrian back here. If I'm at nodal point 2, then if I go backwards to 1 and then back to 7, that means if I go around the circle, that means it's actually 2 modal half steps back, which will have a distance of 1, 2, 3 notes away. And that's because the distance between 7, if I go to the right, 7 to 1 is always a half step. 1 to 2 is always a whole step. That means if I go backward, 2 to 1 is always a whole step backwards, and 1 to 7 is always a half step backwards. So if I was to play it back here, I would be 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I could just say, I'm just going to keep this as Dorian, but I'm going to play a chord all of a sudden that has that shape in it, right? So I'm going to be like, okay, it's still a Dorian. I see it as a Dorian, but I'm going to play it like it's the shape. I'm going to play it as though it was like the shape, second string down from the ceiling of this one. So that would be shape number 5, or the Mixolydian shape, or the Ionian A shape. And I'm going to play it from here just like it was that shape, because I want that diminished fifth or whatever. So it'd be 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So maybe I just throw that in there. I'm like in minor, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, I'm like 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I throw that in, but just for a quick second, just to mix things up. And then I go back to the Dorian. Well, if I want to do that, how would I name that chord that I throw in or something? I don't want to change my key signature. I would rather, instead of saying it's a diminished chord or something like that, which doesn't really, you could, but it doesn't really give you the context. I'd rather say that it's still a Dorian / Locrian chord. It's a Dorian / Locrian 2 chord, meaning it's the root plus 2 modal whole steps, possibly, if I add the Dorian and the fifth to it, because that gives me more context. Because now I'm like, okay, look, people, I'm still at 4 o'clock. I'm not changing. I'm not going to shift the whole shape up. I'm still seeing that as the anchor point of a Dorian, but I'm throwing on top of it a Locrian shape. Now you could also say, I don't want to call it a Locrian shape. I want to call it I just want to add that flat 5 in it and build like a Locrian chord, but I don't want to name it by Locrian. Well, I could still name it by the Dorian, right? Because if I add like if I add a normal third and a 5, I could say it's a Dorian. I could say it's a Dorian 1. That would be the third, and then plus, and I can name this point either as its distance, or I can just name it by the ocean point, which I would say it's a 2.5, right? Meaning it's in the ocean. So I could name it, like I would think I could name it by a Dorian 1, which would pick up the third, and then plus 2.5, meaning I'm naming it by the ocean, the actual nodal point, rather than by distance. I think that's a little bit more efficient. So I think most people would want to say, if I'm going to name it by the Dorian node, wouldn't it be nice just to say, oh, I'm playing basically a Locrian chord on top of it, right? I think most people would do that. But if you wanted to name it from the perspective of the Dorian, you still could, because I could say it's a Dorian 1 if I picked up this third still, right down here. And then I'm going to say plus the nodal point of 2.5, I think is the easiest way to do it. And how do I know it's a nodal point and not a distance? Because anything that has a point in it means it's saying it's going to be an ocean note, which I'm going to name by nodal point. I think that would be the easiest way to go. And I wouldn't even need the 0.5 because they're all 0.5, so I can drop the 5 and just call it point. And I could drop the plus because there's no numbers over 10. So I could say it's a Dorian 1 and then 1 point. Dorian 1 point, right? Meaning Dorian, first modal whole step, and then, 2 point, because it's Dorian, it's 2 point, which would be Dorian ocean. So I know that's getting weird, what I just said right there. But the idea is that, like, I feel like the naming convention should be flexible, that you could say that I could stay at that as the anchor and then name it from that point, either by giving it a Dorian / Locrian chord shape, which I think would be most common, or actually defining the distances from this area. If you define something that's in the ocean, I think it's easier to define it by actually point name rather than distance, which you can see in the chord naming by the fact that there's a point, which means it's going to revert then to point naming. But I don't think most people do that. They call it Locrian. But anyway, the other way you could do it is you can shift this forward, and I'm going to say, no, I want to see the key signature change, right? So that means I want this to move forward 1, 2, 3. So if my finger's on the star of D, I want to say this whole shape's going to shift up 1, 2, 3 ticks to the right. So if I'm at 4 o'clock plus 3 ticks, the Ionian's going to shift up 4. It's going to be 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock. So when I put 7, I'm going to imagine this 7 goes right under my finger, under the star of D. So now the star of D is over the continent of Locrian continent, the Ionian, the Locrian continent, which is continent number 7, right? So now I'm leaning forward into shape number 5, or the Mixolydian shape, or the Ionian A shape. Let's bring it back. Let's say that I don't know it by that Locrian shape there. Let's say I know it from the top shape, up top, because I memorized my top string. So I can play my Locrian from the top string, which I would call top string, that would be shape number 2, which you might call the Locrian / Ionian shape, or the Ionian E shape. So it would be like 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So could I play this Dorian as though it was the top string of shape number 7? I could. So I'm playing in Dorian, and then I'm like, okay, I just want to throw down. I don't want to change to anything else. I just want to play Locrian on top of it. So I'm going to call it a Dorian / Locrian chord, or Dorian / Locrian scale, right? I'm anchoring it on Dorian, but I'm throwing Locrian on top of it just for a second. 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I'm like, now I'm back to Dorian, back to 4 o'clock. Like, what was that? Don't worry, I'm back. I'm back. You didn't even hear that. I know. What was that? Don't worry, I'm still in Dorian. I haven't gone crazy. There was a flat 5. I heard it in there. No, dude. No, this is just minor, man. Or I can say, what if I want to shift the whole thing, but I only know it by this one up top? If I shifted it down, how would that be? Well, then it would be like this would shift down 1, which would be equivalent to like 5 to the right, and then 2 ticks left. So that'd be 5, 4, 3. A net of 3 to the right, which would give us from 4 o'clock plus 3 to 7 o'clock. So once I hit 7 here this time, I'm going to imagine this is going to go down and over. And that means that this line right here is going to cross the fault line. When it crosses the fault line, it shifts to the right automatically. So I see it shifting to the right once, and then it's going to go back to the left 2. So this line is going to shift a net of 1 to the right, right? So that means this 1, for example, is going to be here on the 6th fret. Let's see if that is the case. So when I do it this time, remember, this isn't going back this way anymore. What's happening is it's going down in this way. It's actually the same thing. It's not doing anything different, but that's what we're imagining. Okay, boom. All right. And then, so the 1 ended up over here. Yeah, because it shifted. Yeah, I went the wrong way. It shifted 1 to the left, not to the right. So that's why I practice. That's why it's a practice session. All right, let's bring it back. But you see what I meant. I just went dyslexic on it. Well, I'm not I'm not trying to claim dyslexia or something. I'm just saying, sometimes I get my 6s and 9s backward, probably more than the average person, but I'm, quite a bit more, but still not like, it's not really a problem for me. I'm gonna say then, okay. I'm gonna say, so 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So let's just analyze that now. So now we're leaning forward into shape number 5. And you might call that then the Mixolydian shape or the Ionian A shape. And we're playing actually in the Locrian. So notice this is kind of funny because the Locrian, the first modal whole step is not out of whack. Why? Because even though the Locrian is not in the short start group or the minor group, it does have, it's closer to the short starts or the minors than the long starts or the major group. So that means, so because it has a short first modal half step, second scale, first modal whole step, second modal half step, third scale degree. So it's in the same relative position as what we had before, which was the Dorian here to here. So same relative position. So that means that nodal point number 2 is always Locrian's first modal whole step times 2 second modal half step plus 1 third scale degree, which has a distance of a short distance 3 notes away as opposed to a long distance of 4 notes away, as we already measured because it's the same relative distance here. Okay. Then what's weird about Locrian? The fifth. The fifth is what's weird. Minor second's kind of weird, but not as weird as the fifth. Fourth modal half step, fifth. Your face is weird. Okay, whatever, dude. Let's see. Let's check it out on the next way of looking at it. Okay. All right. So now, if I map this whole thing out, we've got the nodal points mapped out. We're in the collection of notes around the key of C. So we have fret 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The shape represents the fretboard, kink in the tuning shown. And so we're at second string down, 5th fret up is the star of D. And it's the star of D is hovering over at 4 o'clock. The Dorian continent, continent numero dos, number 2. So we want to make it Locrian. So there's a Locrian out here leaning forward into shape number 5, which is the Mixolydian shape, the Ionian A shape. I want to move that over 1, 2, 3 ticks to the right. That means this number 1 is going to move over 3 ticks, taking us to 4 o'clock plus 3, which is 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock is D sharp. If you name A1, then 7. If you number the notes, I know they won't let you do it. Look, somebody needs to talk to somebody about this not naming the notes thing, okay? It's like I keep on bringing up. I don't know if you realize the wooden ladder thing. I mean, I think England had the Union made them do the wooden ladders. We had bad stuff like that here in the United States as well, you know. And it's like if you're climbing on a moth-eaten, like infested wooden ladder because the Union won't let you buy like a new one, that's the problem. If you can't number the notes because the Union won't let you or something, or they make fun of you, then like they call you like a nerd or something. What is this, math? What are we doing, math now? That's kind of how it started, didn't it? Didn't it start with it? Yes, we're doing math. Okay. All right. Anyway, someone needs to something needs to say, this is ridiculous, dude. I mean, okay. Anyway, we're going to move this up. I'm going to say, from the perspective of the yellow, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th fret up, 2nd string down, finger still on the star of D, but now the continent under it is continent Locrian numero 7, 7, leaning forward into shape number 5, the Mixolydian shape or the Ionian A shape. Boom. All right. What if I know the Locrian from the top shape here, right there? There's the top shape, shape number 2, which you might call the Locrian / Ionian shape or the Ionian E shape. Could I play this star of D as though it was hovering over the continent of Locrian, but imagine it like it's the top shape or shape number 2? We can. Why does that work? Well, you could change the collection of notes to see that if you wanted to by thinking about the whole thing shifting down 1 tick, which is equivalent to shifting 5 to the right or 7 to the left. Why? Because the whole grid is made out of the fourths and fifths, perfect fourths and fifths vertically, which makes perfect sense, not just from a guitar, but standard music theory. You might have heard of it. The circle of fifths, the circle of fourths. You might have heard of it. Why don't we just graph it all out like that on any instrument? Wouldn't that like make sense? But then it doesn't work because the key, you don't have the difference in the white keys and the black key sizes. Yeah, no instrument has that except for one. I feel like that's not a requirement. I feel like that's that particular instrument's problem, and even with that problem, this would be more logical to think about it and then think of why the keys fit onto the. You don't try to force the Platonic forms onto the uneven keys. You try to force the uneven keys onto the Platonic form, or see why it works the other way, right? That's how you. If you were anyway, this would so 1 tick down would be like 5 ticks to the right, and then 2 ticks to the left would be 5, 4, 3. So 3 plus 4 would get us to 7 again. So 1 tick down, 2 ticks to the left. So now we're on, from the perspective of the yellow, 5th fret up, 2nd string down, still on the star of D, but I'm leaning forward once again into shape number 5, the Mixolydian shape, the Ionian A shape. We can also see from the red that we can visualize that shape as though it's the top string of shape number 2, the Locrian / Ionian shape or the Ionian E shape, as long as we account for the kink in the tuning as we go down, which we won't get to if we go through the scale one time because we have a ways to go before we get down to that kink in the tuning. You know what I mean? So let's bring it back up. Let's bring it back up. Let's check it out one other way. So now we've mapped out all of the stars on top of all of the continents. All the continents happen to line up to their own star in heaven. It's beautifully symmetrical universe that they're living in here. Not exactly like our, it's because all the continents and oceans like line up exactly to like the star grid. So now, but then we have our constellation that we're focusing in on, which is the beautiful fretboard constellation. And so that means, and the beautiful fretboard constellation, the top string with the string closest to the ceiling, the open E, has nodal point at 4 o'clock, 3 Phrygian. The open A, nodal point or continent Aeolian, 6. Open D, continent Dorian, 2. Open G, continent Mixolydian, which is the 5. Open B, continent Locrian, which is the 7. And open E, the string closest to the floor, highest pitch, open E, Phrygian. So 0 fret, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5th fret up, 2nd string down. My finger's on the star of G. The stars are represented by letters in this case, although you could number them, but I don't want to put 2 numbers on there because it was. But anyways, it's the star of D, and leaning forward into shape number, and it happens to be over continent number 2. When you're at 4 o'clock, collection of notes around C major, which is where the Ionian is. And that means that we're leaning forward into shape number 1, the Aeolian shape, or the Ionian G shape. All right, we want to make it Locrian. So I'm going to look back and say, where is the Locrian? Well, if I'm on the Dorian, the fastest way to get there is to go backwards. Dorian, nodal point 2, back to nodal point 1, and then around the horn to nodal point 7, because there's only 7 nodal points, and we go around the 7-point clock face in essence. And so it's going to be 2 nodal points back. All right. And 2 nodal points back would be equivalent to 7 minus 2 or 5 nodal points forward, right? So 5 nodal points forward from a Dorian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 also gets you to the Locrian. Notice the symmetry. Wouldn't it be nice if it was symmetrical? Like it would be symmetrical if you stopped measuring things. Like when you count the thing that you're on, it throws off the symmetry. Okay. Like if I was standing on the block and the block had 7 houses and I was in one house and I wanted to go around the block and I wanted to go 2 houses backwards, would I count the house I'm in and then be like, okay, this house is number 1, 2, 3 counterclockwise? That doesn't work, because then I would have to be like, well, then 7 minus 3, what would be the clock? No, I'm going to say I'm in the house I'm in. That doesn't count. That doesn't count because I'm already in that house. I don't even care what the name is. I don't need to name it number 1 or anything. I could just say I'm going to go from that house 1, 2 houses counterclockwise. And then if I wanted to go the long distance around the block because I want some exercise, then I could say, well, there's 7 houses that are around the block. So if I go like 2 counterclockwise and there's 7 houses, 7 minus 2, that means that I can go 5. That means I can go 5 clockwise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Huh. That makes logical sense. It's kind of funny how, like, if I count the house that I'm in as though that's part of the distance, then, like, it doesn't work. Like, because then I can't, like, if I say this is 1, 2, 3, and then I say, like, 7 minus 3 is like 4 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. But that's not right. I have to say, like, 8. I have to say like 8 minus 3 or something. But that's, why would there be an 8? Is there a 9? Should it be like 9? That doesn't work. Why would it be 9? There's only 7 houses. But no, but wait. If I don't count the house I'm in, and I count from the house, like normal people measure, then I don't have to rename the house I'm in, and then it's symmetrical. That seems like way better. I don't know. I feel like that's way better. Anyway, because so then if If I wanted to move this over, it'd be like 1, 2, 3 ticks to the right. That means the Ionian would be 1, 2, 3 ticks to the right. It would land on D sharp. You know what? That name D sharp, it pisses me off because why do I need a sharp? The sharps and flat only matter if I'm playing in the collection of notes at 4 o'clock around the key of C. Otherwise, they just screw things up. Okay? You know what would be cool is if I numbered them. If I just numbered the notes, then it would just be 1 through 12, and that D sharp would be note number 7. It'd be on note number 7, which I could call the whole collection of notes maybe then just 7 o'clock. So it'd be going up to 7 o'clock. I'm at 4 o'clock on 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock. Not because of that's the Locrian, but because, wait a sec. Yeah, because the 1 ended up on D sharp 7 o'clock. Okay, so now that's the Locrian from the perspective of the orange, 5th fret up, 2nd string's down, still finger on the star string, the string star of D, leaning forward into shape number 5, Mixolydian shape, which you might call the Ionian A shape from a caged system. So it's okay to be caged if you know how the caged works. It's okay to be caged if you're the one with the key to the cage and you're using it for intellectual purposes, right? This is my cage. I'm not abusing people with my caged system. I am using it for educational purposes. The cage, ironically, is free in the mind, not enslaving the soul. That's how we use the caged system here. Anyway, we could see that, so that's right. Okay, so then we're going to go back here, and then we're going to say, what if I only know it from the top string? So this would be the Locrian / Ionian shape, or the Ionian E shape from the caged system. The freedom cage. The freedom cage is liberating us. Sounds counterintuitive, I know, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know how. Anyway, we go 1 tick down, 2 ticks to the left. 1 tick down is equivalent to either 5 ticks to the right or 7 ticks to the left. It's easier to count in 5, so 5 ticks to the right minus 2 would be back to 5, 4, 3 if I'm at 4 o'clock, meaning collection notes around the key of C plus 3, boom, boom, boom. That's going to get us to 7 o'clock, which if we numbered the notes, which I recommend, just test it out. Just test it out. Try numbering the notes and try numbering the nodal points and say, it's not hard math. This isn't hard math. It's like visualizing. It's like more like geometry than, this isn't like calculus. We're not doing, it's like just visualizing. It's just visualizing with numbers. Now, the problem with visualizing with letters is that I can't even count. Let's be honest here, like normal people. Like, it's hard to count just from A to D because of the sharps and flats. But if you numbered it, then you could do like a subtraction problem that like a first grader could do. And then you don't have to count on your fingers like you're the first grader. You know, maybe you still have to count on your fingers. Sometimes I count on my fingers, but with the numbers. But I'd rather count on my fingers with the numbers than with letters with sharps and flats that are like mysterious, that only make any sense. They only make sense if you're playing in the key of C collection of notes. Otherwise, they just mess things up. And they just mess things up. So if I do that from the perspective of the orange, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th fret up, 1st string down, my finger's still on the star of D, which is hovering over the Locrian note, leaning forward into shape number 5, Mixolydian shape, or the Ionian A shape. And we're in the collection of notes around at 7 o'clock, which is D sharp, noting by the Ionian is now on that point. This would also indicate by the red that I can visualize that shape as though it's the top string of shape number 2. And it still works, and that's why it works. It's not good enough to know how that it works, but why it works. People don't think that's true. As long as it works, I don't need to know why. No. we need to know why. Because that helps. That's useful. We need to know why. Okay.